So I realized why all of the factions on the right and the left, whether it's the Charlie Kirks or Nick Fuentes on the right, or it's the LGBT or students, Socialists of America on the left, I realized why the factions, okay, is because it's a way for Satan to delay to delay things. He gets an extra 30, 40 years. And I know it's hard to see, but these are, it's baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, and then I guess the Generation Alpha. So there's a small window for Gen Z. 10 years ago, people were very encouraged by Gen Z. But then Charlie Kirk came along, LGB came along, LGBTQ plus, like all the, adding all these different factions came along, okay? And so now you have a group of Gen Zers, and I know it's not all of them, but that think they know everything, won't listen to anybody that's older than them, have been made because of Charlie Kirk to think that they've been victimized by baby boomers and anybody older than them. And so there's a reason in the Bible that God does things in like the 40-year stage, because it's a generation. 30 to 40 years is a generation. And anybody who's seen any of my other videos, I've said that since the beginning, God's looking for biblical maturity. So once a generation gets pulled into factions and starts letting Charlie Kirk influence them, or Nick Fuentes influence them, or LGB influence them, or whatever it is influence them, instead of letting Christ influence you, then when too many in that generation go down that road and think they know it all, and it's happened to all generations, then God says, okay, we're not quite where we need to be, so we're going to have to look to the next generation. There's a small window left for Gen Z, but just a window. And it doesn't mean God is abandoning you. It just means that, the biblical maturity isn't there yet, and that's what's needed. If you look at the generation, okay, baby boomers, okay? Not that, I know everybody wants to rip on them, which is part of the problem with Gen Z, is doing that. Okay, when you make everything about money and you having a house, and I get, that's what the American dream is, but these people, Charlie Kirks and Nick Fuentes, they want you, to focus on those things because, well, God wants you to focus on Him. Yet this is what a con artist Charlie Kirk was, because while he ran around and said put God first, he was getting Gen Z all upset because, the baby boomers, they did you guys so wrong, and you're never going to have a house, and you're never going to have any of that. Look, every generation has had to bear their crosses, okay? So to carry on like you're so victimized then you show God that you have been influenced by a faction. And those factions Satan creates because it delays his time, because he knows that God will say, well, I have a remnant in Gen Z that I need. So we're likely, since they're not getting it and they're going to let themselves be influenced by the right, or they're going to let themselves be influenced by the left, we're going to have to do some more waiting, because I got to get the remnant that's in Gen Z out of the influencing, being influenced by the turning points, being influenced by all of these people. He wants the generation that's going to be influenced by him. And obviously, you're never going to get a whole generation, but there's a remnant in every generation. Now, that doesn't mean that that He's unhappy with all the generations. It just means that there's still more growing that needs to be done. With the baby boomers, okay, with them, the biblical maturity hadn't come in yet. That men, it was starting too late in baby boomers, and through Gen X, but baby boomers really saw that man, that they had this attitude that Charlie Kirk did, that woman should submit to the husband. Okay, so when Jesus came, it meant everybody needed to submit to him, whether married or not. Okay, these are the traps that the Charlie Kirks are about. Okay, Gen X, so I'm Gen X. Gen X is really sort of just a generation that was a lot of latchkey kids. So we grew up, we didn't have much of a childhood because we had to, be an adult when we had to be an adult really early. So we sort of are, a lot of us just are the generation that is just like, screw all of them. It's just sort of the attitude of Gen X in general. So that's them. Then millennials, you started seeing, I would say it was millennials that God was starting to see what he was most happy with, which was, as I said, it was millennials and Gen Zs. I don't know which is, well, both, I guess. That, both Gen Z and millennials that were starting to come out of this Charlie Kirk, not that have this Charlie Kirk ugly masculinity attitude, okay? But have just a natural, like, yes, we know there's a difference, basics of there's a difference between men and women. There's two genders, that's it, okay? Not all this craziness on the left, but not this far right stuff that says, man is over woman. Okay, so millennials and Gen Z were the examples of naturally, as I said not too long ago, that it was what God wanted to see. Then Charlie Kirk came along as a result of LGBTQ plus whatever. And he wanted to take you way far back and was telling young women that you should submit to your husband. You're like, this is not, no, that's... But he wasn't serving God. He was serving the beast. Both sides do. So what's the next generation? If Gen Z doesn't take advantage of the window, that's there's still that window to be the generation that really does it differently than all the rest. And what I mean by that is meaning be the generation that surrenders and only allows yourself to be influenced by God. Because Satan will get all these factions on the right and the left to influence you because it delays his time. Charlie Kirk, God will never use a false prophet. He will not do it. Charlie Kirk served to just keep Christians stagnant, push, people back sitting in the pews, okay? God wants the personal relationship because he wants you to follow him. He wants the generation, the remnant from the generation, I guess I should say, that is going to understand that in order to have your house, in order to have the fair money system, in order to have accountability, you need to surrender to me. Not be influenced by Charlie Kirk, not be influenced by LGB, not be influenced by Nick Fuentes, not be influenced by Student Socialists of America. None of these groups ever in history fix anything. Only God can fix it. And every generation has been played by factions. Well, maybe Gen X really just sort of was like, we don't care. But, okay, that's not the attitude to have either. The one thing that no society has ever done is surrender to God, and you're never going to get everybody in society to do that. But in order to truly hear the shepherd's voice, you have to fully surrender. And you have to do it daily. And you have to ask to do God's will, not complaining and crying about, I don't have a home and I need this and I need that. Yeah, then God says we're not at biblical maturity. There's people being too influenced by the right factions and too influenced by the left factions that we have to wait till the next generation. He did it in the desert, in Exodus. 40 years for a reason. 40 years is used over and over again in the Bible because he has to wait. Not because he's angry, but because once people get embedded into their belief system of what Charlie Kirk says, LGB says, Nick Fuentes, whatever it is says, then it's hard to break them from that belief system. So God just says we're going to have to do some waiting. As Reagan said, we're always one generation away from socialism.